Welcome on board, chosen one. Look who finally showed up. You already know something is different about the room when you walk into it. You have known it for a long time, even if you never said it out loud. There is a stillness that follows you, not the comfortable kind, the kind that stretches too long, the kind that has weight. You catch eyes that do not look away fast enough. You walk into a conversation and it folds itself shut like a book someone is not ready for you to read. You stand still and you feel the pull of attention from people who will not admit they are watching. And the strangest part is that nobody explains it, nobody names it. They just stare. And then they say nothing. You have been carrying that silence for years, turning it over in your hands, asking yourself what it means, whether it is judgment, whether something is wrong with you, whether you are imagining it. You are not imagining it, and nothing is wrong with you. The silence is not about you failing. The silence is about them not being able to hold what they are seeing. They said you were too much, too quiet, too intense, too hard to read. They passed you over in rooms where they picked the louder voice, the easier face, the more predictable presence. They assumed still water meant shallow water. They gave their attention to the ones who announced themselves, and they told you, with their choices and their silence and their small labels, that you were not worth the ceremony. Oh, the legend needs to bow. That was the story they rehearsed. They called your stillness coldness. They called your depth distance. They called your calm arrogance because they could not find the word for someone who does not need validation the way they do. They looked at you and felt something they could not categorize, and so they gave it an ugly name and moved on. Yet here you are, in every room, still drawing their eyes without trying, still stopping conversations just by entering them, still being the one they cannot stop thinking about after they leave. Something changed, not loudly. It never is. The universe does not announce its corrections with noise. It simply shifts the architecture of things beneath the surface. Quietly, the way tides move without asking permission. The universe registered what you carry before any human eye ever did. It placed something in your field, in the specific frequency of how you exist in a room, that other people pick up on without being able to translate it. That is not metaphor. That is what this transmission is here to decode. The stairs were never about your flaw. They were about your signal. And the universe has been protecting that signal even when you doubted it existed. Before we go deeper into what people are actually registering when they watch you in silence, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Do it to pay this message back into the universe. That is your entrance fee for this briefing. That is how you tell the unseen that you received this, that you are present, that you are ready for what comes next. Now, back to the truth. What really happened in all those rooms where the air shifted and the mouths stayed closed is something far more precise than you were taught to believe. This is not just a video, it is a blueprint for understanding the specific frequency that has followed you your entire life. It will decode why the long looks happen, what the silence is actually made of, why awe, when it is not understood, disguises itself as avoidance. It will name what the starers would say if they ever gathered the courage to speak, and it will tell you why most of them never will. And at the very end, it will release you from the weight of decoding looks that were never yours to carry in the first place. The universe brought you here today because you have spent enough time being a question in other people's minds without understanding that you are actually an answer they have not yet earned. Drop 777 in the comments right now. Not as superstition, as a signal, a declaration to the universe that you are locked in, that you are here, that you are willing to receive what this transmission is carrying for you. 777. Let the unsee it. If you are truly one of the chosen ones, you feel that pull to stay until the very last second. That pull is information. Trust it. We are about to break this down step by step, layer by layer, with the kind of precision that leaves no room for doubt. The stares, the silence, the awe they could never name, all of it decoded. Let's begin. The kind of stillness that announces itself before you do. They could not beat you at the game, so they convinced themselves the game was not real. There is a specific quality that lives inside people like you, and it has nothing to do with effort. You did not practice it. You did not build it from a workshop or a morning routine or a conversation with someone who told you to stand differently. It was already there, settled into the floor of your presence the way a foundation settles into earth long before anyone builds on top of it. The universe deposited something into you at a depth that most people never reach in themselves, and when they get close enough to feel it, they do not have the vocabulary for what they are sensing. So they go quiet, and they stare, and they tell themselves they are not staring. Think of a sword wrapped in cloth. You hand it to someone who has never held one before. They feel the weight shift in a way that cloth alone should not shift. They do not know what it is. They only know that something is inside it. They handle it carefully. They do not explain why. That is what happens when you enter a room. People feel the weight of something they cannot name, and their instinct is to be careful with it. Careful looks like silence. Careful looks like watching. Careful from a distance looks exactly like awe. Presence is not performance. Depth is not decoration. The ones who stare are not judging you. They are trying to read a language they were never taught. You might wonder why the quietest people in the room are usually the ones who draw the most attention. Here is the answer. Noise is easy to categorize. You hear it, you file it, you move on. But silence from someone who is fully present is not the absence of something. It is the fullness of everything compressed into a single frequency. People feel that compression in their chests before they register it in their minds. That is why the mouth closes before the thought forms. They are responding to a sensation, not a decision. Ever wonder why they remember everything you said in a conversation you barely remember having? Because you were not performing. You were simply existing. And existing at that depth leaves marks on people without your permission, without your effort, without even your awareness. The universe does not need you to announce yourself. It already did that before you walked through the door. The weight of silence and why it belongs to you. Silence is not passive, it is pressure. And you have been carrying the weight of theirs while they pretend they are not the ones who folded. Most people treat silence as a gap, something that should be filled, patched, covered with sound before it becomes uncomfortable. They rush to speak in the spaces between sentences. They laugh too quickly at things that are only slightly funny. They volunteer answers to questions no one asked. Watch them in a room with you, and you will see it happen in real time. The silence you carry does not feel like a gap to them. It feels like a wall with no handholds. And their instinct is to scale it or retreat, and most of them retreat. And they call that retreat by other names because they do not want to name it what it is. Picture this, a storm cloud sitting on the horizon, not moving, not breaking, just present, dark and enormous, holding everything inside itself. People stop on the road and look at it. They do not look at the blue sky above their heads. They look at the thing that carries potential, the thing that holds something compressed and unreleased. You are that cloud. Your silence is not empty. It is full. So full that people feel the static of it when they get too close. And some of them mistake that static for danger when what they are actually feeling is magnitude. You might wonder why people who barely know you seem to walk on eggshells in your presence. The answer is not that you are intimidating in the way they think. It is that your silence clarifies. When you are quiet, everything else gets louder by contrast. Their nerves get louder. Their doubts get louder. Their doubts get louder. Their awareness of themselves, of how they sound, of what they are saying, all of it gets amplified inside the space your stillness creates. They feel exposed, and they blame the mirror for the reflection. Anger is loud. Closure is efficient, and stillness from someone who does not need the room to approve of them is the most efficient thing in any space. The universe did not teach you to be quiet because quiet was safer. It taught you to be quiet because quiet is where your actual power lives. The noise was never yours to compete with. The ones who filled the room with sound were burning fuel. You were accumulating it, and that difference, quiet and patient and deeply invisible to the people who only watch for fire, was the entire strategy, whether you knew it was a strategy or not. How they exposed themselves in the watching. They thought monitoring you was a form of control. They did not realize it was a confession. There is a particular kind of person who watches you and believes they are the observer. They think surveillance gives them the advantage. They track your movements in the social landscape. They notice when you are in the room and pretend they have not noticed. They listen to what you say with the careful attention of someone taking notes, filing details, constructing a case. They think watching you from a distance is the same as being ahead of you. It is not. Watching you is surrender wearing the costume of strategy. Imagine a chess match where one player has stopped making moves and simply stares at the board, studying the pieces, unable to decide. The other player, the one sitting still and waiting, is not losing. The one who cannot move is the one under pressure. Panic does not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it looks like a long, fixed stare from across a room. Sometimes it looks like someone asking about you to people they think are closer to you. Sometimes it looks like attention that was supposed to be assessment, but turned into something that cannot stop itself. Think of how a camera follows movement it finds significant. The camera does not choose the subject because the subject is weak. It follows what it cannot look away from. Every pair of eyes that has ever tracked you across a room was operating on the same instinct, not judgment. Magnetism. And magnetism is not neutral. It costs the one who feels it something. It takes something from them every time they look and cannot hold what they see. You might wonder why people who seemed to dismiss you in public were the same people asking about you in private. Here is what was happening. The dismissal was a performance for an audience they needed to manage. The private curiosity was the truth they could not contain. One was theater, one was data, and the data always contradicts the performance because what you register in a person's field cannot be argued away by what they say out loud in a group setting. By the time they feel threatened, you are already ungovernable. By the time they start watching, you have already moved 3 steps past the place they are watching. The universe arranged this precisely. Their surveillance was never a threat to your trajectory. It was evidence of it. People do not dedicate attention to things that do not matter. Every moment they spent monitoring you was an involuntary acknowledgement that you registered as significant before they had the courage to say it to your face. Their watching was their worship. They just never bowed in front of witnesses. The architecture of timing and why everything moved when it did. You did not miss your moment. Your moment was being constructed in the dark while you were standing in the room wondering if you had already been forgotten. The universe does not operate on the schedule that impatience prefers. It operates on the schedule that precision requires. And everything that felt slow, every season that felt stuck, every room where you were passed over and looked through and handed the smallest portion of the attention you deserved, was not a delay. It was preparation, wearing a delay's disguise. The universe was not ignoring you during those seasons. It was insulating you, keeping the signal clean, keeping the construction hidden so that the reveal would land with the full weight of everything that had been quietly assembled underneath. Picture this: a skyscraper being built underground, nothing visible from street level for months. The people walking past see nothing changing. They form opinions about the empty-looking lot. They decide nothing is happening, and then the structure begins to rise, and it rises faster than anything built from the surface ever could, because the foundation was deep. That is your timeline. That is what the universe was doing in the seasons where no one could see the work. Think of a river carving its path through stone. The river does not argue with the rock. It does not announce what it is doing. It simply continues, and the stone yields, not because the river forced it in a single moment, but because the river was persistent in a way that stone cannot outlast. Your presence has been doing exactly this in every room, every relationship, every space where someone looked at you and tried to decide you were less. You continued. And the stone has been yielding. Ever wonder why everything seems to be accelerating now? Why things that were stuck are suddenly moving? Why the people who dismissed you are suddenly more aware of where you are and what you are doing? The answer is that timing compounds. The universe stacks returns. It does not distribute them evenly across all the seasons of patience. It holds them and releases them in clusters, and when the cluster arrives, it arrives with the full interest of every delayed moment built into it. Timing is not luck. Timing is the universe paying a debt it has been accumulating on your behalf. The people who watched you in silence and said nothing did not speak because they were waiting for certainty. They were waiting for safety, for a moment when naming what they saw would not cost them something. That moment is arriving, and their silence, held this long, is about to become the most expensive thing they ever chose to keep, the signal they could not corrupt and could not copy. They offered you smaller rooms and called them gifts. You already knew the difference. There is something in people like you that the universe sealed at a depth that social pressure cannot reach. They tried to shape you into something more manageable, something that would fill the spaces they assigned, rather than the spaces you were built for. They offered you belonging on conditions. They offered you acceptance with fine print. They held out versions of approval that required you to be quieter, smaller, less insistent on the frequency you actually operate on. And you felt it, the pull of that offer, the exhaustion of being on the outside, the temptation to simply compress yourself into the shape they were holding open for you. But you could not do it, not for long, not completely, because what the universe placed in you does not compress without breaking, and breaking would have destroyed the exact thing that made you worth watching in the first place. Imagine a prism. You can try to cover it. You can place it in a dark drawer and tell yourself the light is not there. But the moment any light source reaches it, even a thin line through a closed curtain, it refracts into something undeniable. You cannot hold a prism responsible for what it does with light. It is built to do exactly that. Your signal is built exactly the same way. Every attempt to contain it only proved that it could not be contained. And the people who tried to contain it knew, on some level they would never admit to, that what they were trying to suppress was more real than the version of you they were willing to accept. You might wonder why some people became hostile precisely when you started to come into your own. Not when you were struggling, not when you were quiet and searching, but when you were beginning to arrive. The hostility is the answer to your question. Hostility at your emergence is not about dislike, it is about recognition. They recognized that what was surfacing could not be managed, and they had built their entire relationship to you around the assumption that you were manageable. Your arrival exposed the flaw in their blueprint. Their aggression was structural, not personal. Ungovernable is not a posture. It is a property. Some things simply cannot be redirected once the universe has set them in motion. The ones who watched you in silence were always sensing this, even in the moments when you doubted yourself the most, even in the rooms where you felt invisible and passed over and misread. The signal was broadcasting. It was reaching people at a frequency below their ability to name it, below their ability to argue with it, below their ability to dismiss it and actually mean the dismissal. They tried to turn away and kept turning back. That is not behavior, that is physics. You were always too real to ignore. And now the universe is finished being patient about it. The moment they realized it was already too late, they planned to acknowledge you when it was convenient for them. They did not realize the universe does not run on their calendar. There is a specific moment that happens in the arc of every person who was underestimated, every chosen one who was watched in silence and passed over in public while being studied in private. It is the moment when the people who chose silence recognize that the silence cost them the access they assumed would always be available. They expected you to remain in the position they assigned you. They expected the window to stay open. They expected that whenever it was convenient, Whenever the acknowledgement would benefit them more than the dismissal had, they could simply walk through that window and find you still standing on the other side, waiting for them to arrive at what you had already known for years. Think of a blade in the forge. The forging is violent, the heat is real, the pressure is real. But what comes out of the forge is not the same material that went in. It has been rearranged at a molecular level into something that holds an edge. The people who watched you suffer through the forge, who perhaps even contributed to the heat, assumed the process would diminish you. They did not understand that the forge was the universe's method, not their victory. What came out was not softer. What came out was something that holds an edge they cannot talk their way past. Picture this. A casino where the house always wins. But the house only wins if you stay at the table long enough for the odds to correct. Some players understand when to leave the table, the ones who watched you, managed you, dismissed you, and then wanted access to what you were building. They stayed at the table too long. They played a game whose odds they misread, and the universe, which was always the house in this arrangement, has been settling the account. You might wonder whether it is too late for the people who missed their window. You might wonder whether you should hold the door open a moment longer. Here is the honest answer. You do not need to close any door with force. The universe already moved. The architecture already shifted. The moment you stopped needing their acknowledgement in order to proceed, the window closed on its own. That is not cruelty, that is consequence, and consequence does not require your participation to arrive. Panic does not always look like running. Sometimes it looks like people suddenly becoming very interested in what you are doing after years of looking through you entirely. Their urgency is information. Their sudden interest is a timestamp. It tells you exactly when they recognize the cost of their silence, and that timestamp will always arrive after you have already moved past the place where their recognition would have changed anything. The universe arranged that sequence deliberately. The release and the room that was always waiting for you. You were never the question in the room, you were the answer. They did not yet have the standing to receive. Everything this transmission has moved through has been building toward a single point of release. Not release as surrender. Release as the act of setting down something that was never yours to carry in the first place. The weight of their stares, the meaning you assigned to their silence. The years of turning their avoidance over in your hands and asking what you had done to earn it. You carried that decoding work with extraordinary patience, and it made sense to carry it during the seasons when the truth was not yet visible. But the truth is visible now, and the only thing left to do is put the weight down. Imagine a seed that has been underground long enough that the people above the surface have stopped expecting growth. They have walked across that patch of ground 100 times. They have decided nothing is there, and then something arrives in the perfect arrangement, the right depth of warmth, the right sequence of conditions, and the sea moves, not because it finally convinced the people above to believe in it. It moves because the universe finished the calculation that was running beneath their feet the whole time. You are that seed completing the movement that was always going to happen. The audience's belief was never the variable. Think of an iceberg, 7/8 below the surface. The people on the water see the tip and form their assessment. They do not know they are looking at the smallest fraction of what is actually there. Every person who watched you in silence and never found the courage to name what they were seeing was navigating based on the fraction. They were making decisions based on a portion of your reality so small it would embarrass them if they ever understood the ratio. Their silence was not wisdom. It was the speechlessness of someone who caught a glimpse of the fraction and could not process the implication of what lay beneath. You might wonder what to do with all of it now. The looks, the silence, the rooms where you were studied and never spoken to. Here is the answer. The universe has been moving you toward. You do not do anything with it. You receive the understanding and then you release the inventory. The looks were never yours to solve. The silence was never a code you were responsible for cracking. The awe that disguised itself as avoidance was their unfinished business. Their incomplete emotional vocabulary, their inability to bridge the gap between what they felt and what they could say. None of that was ever your assignment. What is yours is the room that opens after you stop spending energy in the rooms that never had room for you. What is yours is the depth that was always there, fully intact, patiently uncompressed, waiting for the precise moment when the universe completed the sequence it started before you ever doubted any of this. The stares were always proof of the signal. The silence was always managing itself badly, and the people who watched you and never spoke were not your judges. They were your first, most involuntary audience. The universe does not make signals like yours for rooms that cannot hold them. It makes them for the world that comes after you have finally stopped apologizing for the frequency. And now we close this. Not loudly, not emotionally, calmly, completely. You were never an exception. You were an outcome. Everything this transmission named, the stillness, the silence, the magnetism they could not explain, the timing that felt cruel until it revealed itself as architecture, the signal they could not corrupt, the window that closed the moment you stopped needing it open, none of it was accident. All of it was sequence. And the sequence always had your name in it, but what the universe revealed to you tonight was only the first seal. Pinned beneath this video, there is a deeper path waiting for you. Not a book, not a course, not a document. It is a living blueprint that listens to you before it speaks. Before it opens, you will answer a few quiet questions only a chosen one could answer truthfully. And what you receive is shaped, sealed, and breathing only for the soul you are right now. No two chosen ones receive the same path. Yours is already being prepared as you breathe. Tap the pinned comment. The universe is waiting on the other side. If this transmission met you where you are, drop a simple yes in the comments. Let it stand as your marker, your declaration that you were present for this. And if someone came to mind while you were watching, someone the universe sent you to reach, share this with them. Not as a suggestion, as a signal. If this hit where it was supposed to hit, lock it in.